as both Laura and Nicholson made reference, there's a lot of planning goes into setting something up. Because you do need to know well in advance what's going to happen. It's not the live process of putting something through a saw and making sure you hit the pencil line, your measure was right, and so on. You have to have all of those things in place in a long chain of discovery before you ever really begin. And that starts with really understanding what your goals are. And in a world where you're going to just produce cabinetry by entering fields into software that's going to take your dimensions and produce parts in a sort of pre-formatted landscape where you know that you're going to have 32mm system on your cabinet holes and so on. That's maybe a little bit of a different animal than if you wanted to make custom things. Making custom things is based on vector art. Vector art isn't a new thing. Vector art is the lines that contain the instructions that feed a machine. So when we create imagery with computers, we create pixel-based images or we create vector art. Vector art is something that is not just confined to CNC machining. And I would make a point that there are differences in cost for CNC software versus other kinds of software for a very good reason. So for me, in '92, I came out of college and was introduced into the Adobe software in its infancy. There are now millions of users around the world using Adobe software. It is probably one of the best, if not the best, way to draw vector art. So if you want to start with creating something, your drawing is going to drive everything. Just like the map is going to tell you where to drive your car, you've got to be able to do those drawings well, because that is going to be, for one, a bottleneck and probably the most time-consuming aspect of creating a CNC project. And you're going to want to do it well, and if you're going to want to do it to the level where you maybe want to make something beautiful, well, then you're going to have to be that much better at crafting those drawings. So when software comes and says, yeah, you know, we've got one piece of software that's going to do all of your drawings all the way through to tooling, I would look at that and say, okay, and you want 15 grand for that or $20,000 for that. And when I look at your vector editing, the $700 program that millions of people have been feeding into over all these years is far superior. So I think that software is very, very goal-driven. And I think that for anybody that's getting into this, you really need to look at what are your goals. If you want to really do the best drawings and take that through a workflow, then there become more considerations than you're going to get from a salesman strictly within the CNC world. So the reason that we have 15 programs between 3 people to provide the kind of projects that we do becomes fairly evident all of a sudden, because somebody somewhere has created something that lots of people have fed into to do something specific. And in the crazy possibilities of the CNC world, there are a lot of different ways in, a lot of different things you want to do. So for me as an artist, I'll come at it from a variety of ways. I may actually take a big image in grayscale that I've done in Photoshop, and I'll be able to pull that into 3D and stretch it into a bunch of things that will reflect the depth and undulations of a surface. I can take that and I can put it into another piece of software where you can push and pull the way that you would create something out of clay. And then finally I'll take it into the machining software and I'll say, now I've got to figure out how to tool this thing. And when you get into that discussion, you've got a whole other bunch of considerations. You know, it's essentially 3D machining, which is something that a lot of CNC people might step away from because it's very time-consuming not only to draw in 3D but to machine in 3D, because you're basically taking a topographical map where a bit will travel around itself, overlapping endlessly to get all of the surface off that might create a human face. It's much different and a different mindset than cutting out 2D rectangles and drilling operations and so on that might go into a cabinet job. And those things are all specialties. So for me, there is a train of probably 4 pieces of software that happen on an almost daily basis. And I would just point out that that's something that does need to be thought about, because it makes me more optimum. I'm faster, and being fast in the digital world is unfortunately almost more important than quality, I find, from a lot of the clients. I think that's a sad thing, but it's a reality. Anything that will give me that edge, and if I can do it for $700, I'll damn well be there. So I would point that out. That's one of the reasons that our software costs are so different. a small company comes up and says, we're a CNC company and we're going to provide you with this turnkey solution that's going to do all these things, but they can't possibly compete with everything going on in the world. So I would just say they're going to have to charge an awful lot of money for you to get their product, because they only, take Mastercam, I think they only have 2,500 users in Ontario. If you were to take other kinds of ways of drawing art digitally, you would find that there are many more users. So that's part of what we have to understand about the expenses. Nobody's trying to club you over the head when they say they want that kind of money. I would also say when you're purchasing software, you could look at the new evolving strategies that are happening because of those large costs. And I would point the way that I think this is the way to the future. Instead of us having to put an upfront cost of $15,000 onto a piece of software because you're one of the few users out of their whole arsenal of people or clients, people are now renting software. So companies will come out and they'll say, yeah, we're just going to charge you this every month for perpetuity. It eliminates piracy because it's not worth it anymore. So there's cabinet software out there that it's $50 a month for the design portion, and then it's $125 to have everything, including the CNC output. Suddenly it becomes affordable to give the $50 version to a whole bunch of clients, let them do all their drawings and double check their measurements and stuff, and then you'll just take it and machine it. But for $125 a month that you can write off, why wouldn't you do it? So as that sort of thing evolves, we're going to see a change in the software markets. And I would say that anybody that's making prospective purchases might put their ear to the ground. Big software companies in different aspects of other industries are doing that, and some is now creeping into this one as well. So spend your money wisely, just do some homework. I would just put that out there. What other things was I wanting to say about this? Yeah, I was going to use the tax base analogy, basically that, if you're in a rural municipality, you're going to pay higher house taxes because, it's spread amongst fewer people, and that's the case with the software. I would also say that you got to look at software too. You're working inside somebody else's world. It's not like taking raw materials and running them through a saw and building something. It's more like fixing a car. So if you're a mechanic and you specialize in Hyundai, you've got to think like Hyundai. Your tools are going to be like that. So are all the terminology and all the other aspects of what you're inside of. You're going to spend a lot of time in there if you're a CNC guy. You're going to spend probably as much time inside of that environment as you do in your own bed, at least for the first couple of years. So it's important. You want to make sure that you're comfortable in there and that you can plug into the thought processes that are going on. Well, what happens if you invest yourself in that series of processes over a few years, and at the outset you bought a 3-axis machine and you had some goals, this is back to the goal setting, but maybe you don't have a 4th axis, but boy, wouldn't that be nice if I could take now my designs and with 3-axis I can put a big cylindrical object on there and make awesome posts, and I can carve art into them or whatever I want. And maybe I want a C-axis. Maybe I want to put an aggregate head or molding heads onto a machine, and I want to be able to turn them as the machine goes so I can make the most magnificent crown molding in a big arched curve. But what if I've invested myself now for 2 or 3 years in software that doesn't do those things? So, in the expense category of the software, you may need to look at a company that's going to allow you to grow with them and provide those services as you get there, as you need them. Hopefully, when you set out, you had enough clarity on your goals that you understood where you were going with this, and maybe you're going to have the things in place and the possibilities, even if it's a retrofit to an existing piece of equipment, to be able to do all of the things that you want to do. But if you've been working on Hyundai for a long, long time, and suddenly it's got to be a Porsche that you're working with, you're going to have to relearn a lot of things. And because this is on its sort of the cutting edge of what I think will be a lot of people using software to run CNC and 3D printing machines and so on, because it's going to get so easy and successive generations are going to be so savvy. Babies are almost born knowing how to use an iPad. We can expect to see a lot of change, and we're kind of on the cusp of this right now. But because of it, we don't see a lot of universal nature to the things that we're working with. One piece of software is going to use different names and thoughts and processes from another one. And I certainly see that when I sit down with anything from Visual Mill to Mastercam to En Route, the one that I use a lot. So yeah, I think it's got a lot to do with being able to foresee where you want to go with this. And this is part of what, it's a double-edged sword. For guys like us, who've got ourselves well entrenched into this and on a daily basis go in and say, yeah, we can do that impossible thing, and flying by the seat of your pants half the time, because you don't know for sure. You know that you can say to your client, I'm going to give this my best. Can I do it as fast as everybody wants it? Well, that's always going to be the challenge. Heading into that, you also realize eventually that you've made yourself into something special, because you actually survived however many years of investment of yourself into understanding those things so that you can figure out not how to do something all the time and spend all your time racking your brain that way, but to do it and already know how. That gives you a value and a space in the marketplace that makes you somewhat unique at this point in time in history. So that would be my talk about software. I was also supposed to talk about insert tooling. So insert tooling is primarily thought of as a cost savings. We talk about sharpening bits all the time, and it creates a bit of a hassle because your bits get smaller every time you sharpen them, and they also become softer. Typically a lot of people are working with carbide tools unless they have dedicated diamond tips for repetitive products. So you look at the sharpening costs and you have to weigh that against the hassle of changing all your programming to reflect the sharpened bits, or you've got little modules that compensate for it and so on. If you've got an insert tool, then it's something that you can just throw a new blade in as needed. And having a sharp tool, as the other two have made reference, is a critical thing if you want good results and finishes. As a lot of you probably know, sanding can be the death of a job. You lose all your money sanding. The labor can get out of control. If you've got sharp tools, it was worth that extra bit. So, insert tools become a real consideration. Some of them will actually use tools, blades, and things that are already commonplace and standard in the workplace. So a helical planer will have all these half-inch tools. Well, a lot of the tools for CNC actually will use the same ones. So you'll pay very low price to have all of these blades go into your tools, and those are things to plan for. So the decision at what point you buy an insert tool has to do with not only the amount that you use that tool, but the availability and cost of the actual blades. Some of the blades for these tools cost more than actually buying a bit, so you have to think about why you would do that. The second consideration, insert tools are bigger. They tend to have a larger diameter. You need to make sure you're probably going to have more blade in contact with your material, so you need to plan for that. You need to make sure that you've got enough horsepower to drive that thing without burning out your machine if you're going to start using a lot of things like that. Some of the advantages are amazing. If you're somebody that uses a molder and you've got a lot of trim being produced, and you need to make curved trim, you can often buy, let's just assume that it's stair railing, and you've got elbows and goosenecks and different things like that. You can usually get a bit that will come on the top and one from the side, and you can actually render curves and different shapes with that will completely go in tandem with your existing equipment. That's a huge advantage, and that's suddenly taking the CNC into the realm of integrating with the rest of your shop. On thinking about integrating with the rest of your shop, I would just say that, also in response to what Lauren and Ethan have said, you really have to look at the big picture when you look at CNC. It's not a thing unto itself. It is part of a process in a long chain of things. And, when we talk about lean processes, the idea is that we would overcome the things that slow us down the most. If it's the overweight kid carrying too many things at the back of the series of hikers that's used in the initial lean metaphors. In that case, it could be the setup time that's involved with the job, and it could be the assembly time involved with the job. It's very easy, I think, if you work with big tools and saws all the time, to think about power and speed, and those can become a very big priority when you come to pricing out machinery. But in looking at the overall picture, a CNC will, at the operating stage, outdo the speed of somebody assembling, and quite often the setup, depending on the scenario. That really warrants taking a good look at it, because you might be spending an extra $30,000 to $50,000 for something that you really should have $30,000 or $50,000 spent in other aspects of the overall operation so that you can bring everything up to the greatest possibility of efficiency.